Chapter 631. 8 Doors with Runic Symbols. The thin inner sect disciple had quite extraordinary power, but that description of being extraordinary could only be applied when he was being compared to his fellow sect members. To Su Ming, this sort of person with only that kind power had provoked him twice, so there was no way he would continue indulging him. He was calm, and that calmness was an expression of his aloofness. The thin inner sect disciple's heart was trembling at that moment. He suddenly felt a wave of terror he had never sensed before from Su Ming, and especially from those aloof eyes. When he met their gaze, he felt as if 2 sharp swords pierced right through him, rushing into his eyes and sweeping into his mind before stabbing his heart. They then turned into tens of thousands of lightning bolts in his body, and they were all letting out explosive sounds within him. Those rumbling lightning bolts shattered his heart and ripped through his soul, causing his breathing to quicken and his eyes to widen when he was less than 5 feet away from Su Ming. He abruptly coughed up a mouthful of blood, and it dyed his shirt red, causing the thin inner sect disciple to tremble, and at that moment, numerous bloody cracks immediately appeared on his skin. They continued spreading outwards, and in the blink of an eye, they filled his entire body. He could feel an invisible pressure that fell on him like mountains, ready to crush and flatten him. It was as if his entire world had crumbled completely at that moment. His heart raced madly, thumping loudly against his chest. It was gaining speed rapidly, and the thin inner sect disciple's face turned stark pale. A bang rang out in his chest, and his heart exploded, unable to bear with the pressure. Once that happened, his organs were also crushed in that instant. His body turned into a bloody mess with a loud bang, as he stood 5 feet away from Su Ming. The torn pieces then collapsed to the ground. The blood and flesh spilled all over the place, but none of it fell on Su Ming's body. It was as if the thin inner sect disciple did not dare to get close to Su Ming even in death. Su Ming had not cast any sort of divine ability, had not even lifted his hand to cause the thin man's death. He had only used the might formed by his own power to press down on him. This sort of power had practically gained physical form as Su Ming's level of cultivation increased. The 2 fellow sect members of the deceased thin man stood dumbfounded and confused by what they saw. The person to react first was the one who was not holding onto the young man from Hidden Dragon sect. With a pale face, he immediately retreated without any hesitation, turning into a long arc and leaving this place in haste. Terror filled his entire body, and the rhythmic beat of his heart was replaced by tremors. Shock and fear became the only things in his heart, and as he retreated, only one thought remained in his mind. He had to get as far away as possible from this place, without care for anything else. A flash of crimson appeared, and it swept past him as he continued escaping. Confusion surfaced in his eyes, and just as he was about to lower his head to look, his head was separated from his body in the middle of his act of dipping it downwards. His head fell into the canyon, and his body, too, plummeted down with a shudder. A storage bag flew out from the corpse, and it was swept up by the crimson light before it charged towards Su Ming. It floated before him and revealed itself. It was the small snake. Its injuries were mostly recovered after these few years. It might still look a little feeble, but its body was at least complete. How long are you going to hide? Su Ming stroked the small snake's head, and the snake looked as if it enjoyed his touch. It wrapped its body around his arm. Su Ming's question was clearly not directed towards the small snake. Besides him, there were 2 people in this place. One of them was the stunned evil spirit sect disciple. The other was the young man he held under his arm. Almost at the instant Su Ming asked that question, the evil spirit sect disciple's heart trembled, and he whipped his head downwards to look at the Hidden Dragon sect member he was holding. During that instant, he saw a chilling glare shining within the young man's eyes. This was the final ray of light he saw in his life. The next moment, that young man lifted his right hand and waved it swiftly like a ray of lightning, and blood gushed out of the evil spirit sect disciple's neck. A muffled bang sounded in the air, and the evil spirit sect disciple's body was torn into pieces, falling into the depths of the canyon. The young man from Hidden Dragon sect floated in mid-air. Then, with an incredibly solemn expression mixed with wariness and nervousness, he wrapped his fist in his palm in a greeting towards Su Ming. I am Sun Shan, from Hidden Dragon sect. Greetings, Senior. If you know how to open this cave abode and also possess the jade slip to it, then I won't bother you. Sun Shan's heart was racing at that moment. As he spoke in the mid of his nervousness, he started slowly backing away. He could not tell Su Ming's level of cultivation, but if he could use his might alone to cause that thin man's entire body to collapse without even once relying on a single attack, then even at the lowest, his level of cultivation would be at the soul transformation stage. There was even a high possibility that he was already in the ascendant stage. Yet right when he took 8 steps backwards, Su Ming cast him a flat look, and with it, Sun Shan's feet immediately froze. He forced out a smile, and just as he was about to speak, Su Ming lifted his right hand and waved it in his direction. Immediately, a gust of wind that appeared out of nowhere charged towards Sun Shan with a loud roar. Sun Shan's pupils shrank. He wanted to dodge, but after a moment of hesitation, he stood still and did not move, simply allowing the gust of wind to close in on him before turning into a whirlwind around him. That whirlwind swept up his body and came rushing back towards Su Ming before moving past him and charging into the cave abode. Eventually, it reached the depths of the cave abode and pushed Sun Shan onto the mountain wall, as if sealing him there. Su Ming's expression was calm. He cast a glance at Sun Shan, who had been thrown into the cave abode. If he had resisted that wind just now, then he would have died, but since he did not, Su Ming would not kill him. He was not a person who would kill on sight, anyway. Once he sealed him up, he no longer bothered with him and stepped into the opened cave abode. When he moved inside, he waved his arm, and the jade slip that was inserted into the stone door fell off to turn into a ray of crystalline light that fell into Su Ming's hands. As he entered the cave, the stone door closed up with rumbling sounds. If anyone looked from the world outside, they would find that everything had returned to as it was in the beginning, and not a single thing off about this place could be found. Su Ming walked in the cave abode calmly. This place was not incredibly large. Besides the hall in the middle, there were 8 other chambers. Each of the chambers was sealed off by a stone door, and each of the doors had a runic symbol shining on it. All of the runic symbols were different, and all shining with dark light. When Su Ming looked over, he found that each of the symbols seemed to contain a different meaning. It was quiet in the hall where Su Ming stood. Besides the 8 chambers sealed off by the stone doors, the cave abode was empty. That is, besides Sun Shan, who was kept in place by the wind around him on the stone wall before Su Ming. The young man was looking at him nervously at that moment. His heart was racing, and cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. He was thanking all his lucky stars in his heart that he had not chosen to dodge or fight back just now. His level of cultivation was nothing to this person, and if he wanted to kill Sun Shan, he could do so with no more effort than it required to crush an ant between one's fingers. He chose to act obediently before this sort of powerful warrior instead. He might have a chance to survive. At that moment, he knew that he had made the right move. This person had not chosen to kill him but had merely sealed him up. Clearly, he did not want Sun Shan to go out and cause unnecessary trouble for him. With a wry chuckle, Sun Shan thought to himself that even if he went out, he would still not dare to provoke this person. Yet similarly, he also grew deeply respectful toward Su Ming, who was unfathomable in his eyes. This respect was aimed towards Su Ming's caution and his thinking process. This old monster has great power, and he's a careful person as well. He won't allow anything to go out of his control. That's why even if I'm nothing to him, he still chose to seal me here. And even though the seal is powerful, it won't do any harm to me. This is also to make sure that I won't feel a great sense of danger from this subconsciously, and he can prevent me from struggling against it in desperation. Sun Shan's eyes flashed with a light. He believed that he was considered one of the more calculative types in Hidden Dragon sect, and it was precisely because of his power and his cautious attitude that he had been able to survive through this disaster. Wait. He might not be killing me because he's thinking of some other thing. Sun Shan's pupils shrank in fear once again, and his heart let out a loud thump in his chest. He quickly lowered his head and checked his entire body. Then, panic instantly appeared on his face. Su Ming completely ignored Sun Shan, who he was busy overthinking things on the wall. When Su Ming's gaze fell on the first runic symbol that acted as a C for the first stone chamber to his left, his eyes flashed with a brilliant light. He stared at that runic symbol, and a feeling of a stirring wind rose in his heart. In fact, he could even see a whirlwind appearing out of nowhere around him. Su Ming had the highest amount of understanding when it came to wind. He was, after all, the wind berserker's scion. As he sensed that gust of wind around him and within him, the light in his eyes grew brighter. This wind from the void appeared with just one runic symbol. While immersed in his thoughts, he looked towards the seal on the second stone door. At the instant he focused his attention on it and everything else became indistinct. He felt a wave of humidity in the air. He could smell rain, and it was the smell of rain that was pouring down endlessly from the sky. Rain also started pouring around him. It appeared suddenly and fell on Su Ming's body, causing the pensive look in his eyes to become deeper. After a long time, he moved his gaze to the third chamber. There he sensed the rumble of a thunderclap. On the fourth chamber's seal, he felt lightning swimming before it erupted into a shocking ray of light and power. Wind, rain, thunder, lightning. Su Ming turned his head around and started looking at the chambers to his right. Once he swept his gaze past them, he felt the abundance of life from spring, the heat from summer, the blend between them and death in autumn, and also the death of all lives as snow floated down onto the land during winter. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Su Ming mumbled. The light in his eyes became even brighter. Forget the items in these chambers. These runic symbols alone can already be considered as treasures. If I can fuse all 8 of them into my mind, then it would mean that I've mastered the power of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, as well as wind, rain, lightning, and thunder. Su Ming lowered his head and lifted his hands. A glint appeared in his eyes. Is this a coincidence? There are 5 fingers on my left hand, but only 4 mean wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, and 4 of the 5 fingers in my right hand mean spring, summer, autumn, and winter. A faint smile appeared on Su Ming's lips. With a single move, he appeared before the first stone chamber to his left and sat down cross-legged before it. With bright eyes, he stared at the runic symbol on the stone door and started copying it. Chapter 632, Overturning the Path of Life and Death Within the 4 Seasons. Sun Shan stared at Su Ming with a dumbfounded expression, his heart filled with shock. As a hidden dragon sect disciple, he naturally knew about the 8 seals on the stone doors. Once he saw Su Ming sitting cross-legged before the first stone door, looking as if he wanted to understand and gain an epiphany regarding the wind runic symbol, disbelief appeared on his face. He also scoffed coldly in derision at Su Ming's actions in his heart. This person might be powerful, but is overestimating himself. Trying to understanding hidden dragon sect's runic symbols? Ha! There are only a few who have managed to do it in the past. There's no way he'll be successful. Sun Shan might be thinking this way, but he did not show even a single one of his thoughts on his face. Time trickled by. Light appeared in the sky. Rain also started falling when it was daybreak. It fell on the ground and washed away the blood in Thousand River Valley. As thunder started roaring outside the cave, a flicker of light shone in Su Ming's eyes as he continued staring at the first chamber. At some point in time he lifted his left hand swiftly, and with a flick of his index finger, he drew a runic symbol. It was written in air, but it was the exact same as the seal on the door. This was the wind seal, and due to Su Ming's outstanding knowledge towards wind, he had come to understand this seal the fastest among all who had ever tried. At the instant the seal was written, a runic symbol gradually appeared on the pad of his left index finger. Once that runic symbol appeared, a loud rumble shot into the air, and the first door opened slowly to reveal the chamber inside, but it was empty. There was nothing within the chamber. Su Ming remained as calm as ever. There was not a hint of change on his expression. To him, it was no longer important whether there was any treasure in this chamber. He had already found the most valuable thing to him in this place. The 8 runic symbols. Jiu Yuan Hai would have never expected this to happen in the scheme he devised. He had wanted to use Su Ming to ward off his pursuers so that he would have time to escape and that he would not have to pay too much of a price for it. He only had to give up the few things he had in his storage bag and the jade slip to open the cave abode to the treasure trove in this place. That jade slip could be considered as a valuable treasure usually, because it was the only token that could open this cave abode, and this place also contained the items Hidden Dragon Sect had accumulated for many years. However, that jade slip was useless to him at that moment, because the cave abode was now empty, and all the things inside had been hidden away in some other place. Yet he did not expect that the 8 seals on the stone doors to the chambers would become Su Ming's greatest reward during his trip to Hidden Dragon Sect. The 8 runic symbols were something inherent to Hidden Dragon Sect, and it was present within all of its branches. Their usual function was to be used as seals, but there were also rumors that if someone possessed high comprehensive abilities, they would be able to understand the changes in the world with their help. Because the 8 runic symbols were left behind by Hidden Dragon Sect's ancestor. Over countless of years, only a handful of people in Hidden Dragon Sect had been able to obtain a serendipitous event from the 8 runic symbols. The others had not been able to sense anything, and their numbers were too great to be counted. That was why Jiu Yuan Hai had instinctively overlooked it and had instead believed that the things he took away from the chambers were the real treasures. If he knew about Su Ming's change right at that moment, he would probably be shocked by it. Su Ming only gave the empty chamber a flat look before he got up to move towards the second chamber. There he focused his full attention on the second runic symbol. Su Ming, who had all his attention trained on his target, did not notice Sun Shan's widened eyes and his expression of disbelief and shock. The young man's breathing had sped up some time ago. He had been watching Su Ming all this while, and when he saw the wind runic symbol appearing on the kid's left index finger, the powerful mental blow left behind by what he saw made his heart race, causing him to be unable to believe in what he saw. He understood the wind runic symbol within 4 hours. Even if the 8 runic symbols here are mere copies and not the real ones from our sect in the land of immortals, but to be able to understand them fully within 4 hours. This is... Sun Shan sucked in a sharp breath and only managed to recover after a long time had passed. When he saw Su Ming not taking even a moment to rest and moving to understand the second stone chamber rain runic symbol, Sun Shan could not help but become nervous. This time, he was not anxious for his own safety, but for Su Ming's actions, because they had completely overturned his beliefs. 12 hours later, when the sky outside turned dark once more, Su Ming lifted his right middle finger, and with a bright sparkle in his eyes, he drew out the rain runic symbol on the stone door. At the instant he did so, a runic symbol also appeared on the pad of his middle finger, just like it did for his index finger. At the same time, the second chamber opened up with a rumble. Su Ming did not even look inside. He got up and walked towards the third chamber and sat down cross-legged before it. As he looked at the thunder runic symbol, his eyes began shining brightly. Sun Shan watched the wide-open second chamber with an awestruck face. His mind was completely blank, but before long, when the third chamber, too, opened up with a loud rumble, his gaze as he looked towards Su Ming became filled with terror once again. He was still not afraid for his own survival, but of Su Ming's frightening comprehensive abilities. What's with his comprehension skills? Just who is he? Sun Shan felt that if he spread what he just saw and Hidden Dragon Sect learned about it, it would stir up his entire sect. In fact, perhaps even the other immortal sects would be shocked by what they heard. 2 days later, with a slight hint of fatigue on his face, Su Ming drew the lightning runic symbol on his left little finger. He printed it on his finger pad. The 4 chambers to his left were open. Su Ming did not look at them. Instead, he lifted his left hand and cast his gaze on the 4 fingers on his left hand. Gradually, his lips curled up into a smile, and he had a strong feeling that his left hand had now obtained control over wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. He might only have a small amount of control over these elements, but that control was like a seed that was buried deep within him. At that moment, Sun Shan was gradually growing numb towards all the shocking sights he saw during these past 2 days. As he looked at Su Ming, besides laughing wryly in his heart, he only felt miserable. It did not matter whether it was Su Ming's appearance or his power, he had far surpassed him in both aspects. Even his comprehensive abilities were terrifying. His intelligence was nothing to be scoffed at either. There might just be a simple seal placed around Sun Shan, but the more he thought about it, the more he believed that there was something else lying in wait for him. No matter what it was, there were problems lurking all around for him. One small mistake, and it would be over for him. Either this old monster has been walking down the path of cultivation for an unknown amount of years, or he's a prodigy of some sect. I might be lacking compared to those prodigies, but the achievements I've gained up to this date due to my upbringing are not something they can compare. Only by thinking this way could Sun Shan feel a little comforted in his heart. Su Ming did not immediately head off to understand the 4 runic symbols of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Instead, he chose to sit down and rest for some time. Once his fatigue disappeared, he opened his eyes and looked towards the first chamber to his right, the spring runic symbol. Spring means to have an abundance of life. It is the season where all manner of life wake up from their slumber. Su Ming mumbled. He looked at the spring runic symbol, and this lasted for several days. All that time lasted only for an instant to him, but he never managed to immerse himself completely within the symbol, and could not copy it down just as he did after understanding wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. During those days, the fatigue in Su Ming's eyes appeared once again, and this time, it was stronger than before. He did not go on to try and think about what was happening in the world outside, but poured all his heart and soul into trying to understand the runic symbol and to copy it. Nothing about the world outside mattered to him at that moment, even if it meant that Thousand River Valley was by then occupied by Evil Spirit Sect once the Hidden Dragon Sect was completely annihilated. The valley thus then turned into the location for Evil Spirit Sect's branch, which resulted in the place becoming a line of defense for the eastern front of Eastern Wastelands, and one of the ways to reach the continent's center. Numerous long arcs flew about in the sky. The members of Evil Spirit Sect were not the only ones occupying the valley. The people from the other evil sects also came to the place, causing Thousand River Valley to bustle with life. Compared to the liveliness outside, Su Ming's cave abode was filled with silence. His breathing was not loud, and even though his eyes were slightly bloodshot, he still continued trying to understand the spring runic symbol. The difficulty in his efforts to try and understand the symbol this time made Sun Shan breath out a sigh of relief. At least this person was slightly more normal because of this. If he had truly come to understand all 8 runic symbols, then this would have become a huge slap in the face of Hidden Dragon Sect. This old monster might have extraordinary comprehensive abilities, but our 8 runic symbols aren't that easy to understand. These ones might just be copies, but they still won't be easy for him to grasp. Sun Shan cast Su Ming a glance, and he started laughing coldly in his heart again, and in the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. Su Ming's face was colored in fatigue, and there was even more red in his eyes as he stared fixedly at the spring runic symbol. Over the past few days, no matter how he tried to understand it, he never managed to immerse himself, as if the life force contained within it was out of his element. Yin Death Region. Su Ming closed his eyes for the first time since several days ago. In his mind, the memory of him rapidly aging and fading away as he stood on the ancient bronze sword as he left Yin Death Region surfaced. Right after this scene was the memory of his blood turning into the aura of death on Fang Kanglan's finger before it disappeared. Spring is the revival of all life, and summer is when all lives reach the pinnacle of their being. Autumn is the decline of life and the beginning of death, and winter is the cold state of death for all lives. Su Ming's eyes flew open. He did not look at the spring runic symbol, but chose instead to look at the 4th runic symbol on the 4th door, the winter symbol that meant the lifeless state of all lives. I am in Yin Death Region, and that spirit from 9 Yin World once mentioned that I was dead, and I can also tell that from what I saw. I might not want to accept it, but there is a high chance that his words were true. Since I'm dead, then it's natural that I can't sense the life force of spring, but I can try and understand the lifeless state of winter, and I will reverse the flow of spring, summer, autumn, and winter to that of winter, autumn, summer, to spring, and with this order, I will walk down the path of revival from death. Su Ming's eyes flashed with a brilliant light. He had been lost for many years, and still could not see the path before him clearly. He had only been walking forward in this path that he could not see with a single-minded thought, and only at this moment, within this cave abode in Hidden Dragon Sect, did he gain a chance and found the path from death to life. This path overturned the world, which reversed the flow of the 4 seasons. This path was a path depicting life and death, and it would start from winter before leading him straight to spring. If everything in the world started from winter where all manner of life slept deeply in the lifeless state, then when autumn arrived, the snow and ice would melt, and the aura of death would exchange places with the faint traces of life. When summer came about, the aura of death would disappear, and life would erupt forth, which would allow a person to use it to move towards spring, and during spring, he would be fully revived, and he would wake up from his sleep. Su Ming's eyes shone. At the moment he looked towards the winter runic symbol and came to understand the path of life and death in his heart, he lifted his right little finger and swiftly drew the winter runic symbol. And with a bang, the door with the winter runic symbol opened. Chapter 633, Bright Yang's Mystery. When the door with the winter symbol opened with rumbling sounds ringing in the air, a glowing runic symbol immediately appeared on Su Ming's right little finger. A freezing and lifeless air manifested around it as well. At the same time, Su Ming's gaze landed on his right little finger, and he noticed that it was gradually withering away. The color of that finger became distinctly different from that of his other fingers, for it was the little finger of an old man. Su Ming lifted his head after staying silent for some time. His expression was slightly different from before, because it was surrounded by a lifeless presence. It was as if his entire being had instantly gained an ancient air. There was a light sound of someone sucking in a sharp breath, and it came from Hidden Dragon Sect's Sun Shan, whose breathing had become rapid due to his disbelief. He had breathed out a sigh of relief when Su Ming had failed in understand the spring runic symbol even after spending several days on it and had begun laughing at him coldly in derision once again. But once the events at the winter door caught his attention, he felt as if an invisible hand had just slapped him hard across the face. It made all his cold laughter freeze in his heart and all his derisive words die in his mouth. With his breathing having become more rapid, Sun Shan looked at Su Ming with a dazed expression. The winter runic symbol is the last symbol among the 8 runic symbols in Hidden Dragon Sect. It's also the hardest one to understand among them. Yet he actually managed to understand it in an instant. The lifeless and dead presence coming from Su Ming's body also made Sun Shan feel as if he was looking at an illusion. In his eyes, Su Ming seemed to have turned into a big tree, a tree that had withered away and died from winter's biting chill. This sort of tree might just be waiting for spring to arrive. For the instant it would be revived and wake up from its slumber. Several days passed since Su Ming started trying to understand the autumn runic symbol. Thousand River Valley was by then completely occupied by Evil Spirit Sect, and as they made preparations in secret, the scent of battle became incredibly thick in the air. But all of these things didn't have anything to do with Su Ming at that moment. He stared at the autumn runic symbol, then closed his eyes. When he opened them once again after a moment, he looked towards the summer runic symbol, and finally, his gaze returned to the spring runic symbol. I could instantly understand the winter runic symbol due to what I am, but autumn, summer, and spring are each more difficult than the last. With my current abilities, it'll be difficult for me to completely understand them. There was no hint of dejectedness on Su Ming's face, only tranquility. Autumn symbolizes the downfall of death and the appearance of life. Summer is a period where there is a vast amount of life force, and spring is the time where you open your eyes. Su Ming had a faint feeling that when the day came when he fully understood the spring runic symbol, then it would mean that he had reversed the seasons, and he had managed to move from winter to spring. It would mean that the day when he moved from death to life had arrived. He kept the image of the autumn, summer, and spring runic symbols firmly in his head. He might not be able to understand and fuse them into his body right now, but he could take them away in his memory and understand them in time. Su Ming stood up and cast a glance at the 5 chambers that had been opened up in the cave abode. He had been in this place for most of the month without being aware of it. To him, this empty treasure trove itself was a huge treasure. As he swept his gaze past the area, he looked towards Sun Shan, who was still pinned to the wall. A glint appeared in his eyes. At that moment, he was still within the winter runic symbol state, and his entire being seemed lifeless, as if he had withered away. There was not a hint of light in his eyes, and when Sun Shan saw Su Ming's gaze, it made his heart tremble violently. He could not tell what sort of eyes were those. It was a gaze that could not be described with words, only expressed by what he felt. It was a feeling he would get when he looked at a corpse and it opened its eyes to stare back at him. Those were dead person's eyes. There was no spirit within them, no light, no life, no emotions. The hint of aloofness within them was also gone. There was only apathetic calmness, and it would give all those who saw it a feeling as if their bodies were rotting away at that moment. Sun Shan trembled, and his teeth clattered against each other. The feeling he gained from Su Ming at that moment was too strong, so strong that it made his skin crawl, and he was so afraid that his soul practically left his body in fear. Su Ming looked at Sun Shan and asked flatly after some time, "Are there any other treasure troves in Hidden Dragon Sect?" Sun Shan nodded without hesitation, but his expression remained nervous. After that, he shook his head. "There are, but they're all empty now." What is your status in Hidden Dragon Sect? Su Ming remained calm and threw out another question. A 9th-generation disciple. Sun Shan said with a quivering voice. Give me a reason why I shouldn't kill you. Su Ming remained calm. There was not a hint of killing intent in his gaze, but those eyes that seemed like they belonged to a dead man were more terrifying than any sort of killing intent in Sun Shan's eyes. If you don't, then I will return your soul to the land of immortals. Su Ming lifted his right hand, and when Sun Shan saw the withered little finger, his pupils shrank. He trembled, and the threat of death surged madly into his heart, causing his face to turn stark pale. He immediately spoke up in a shrill voice. Senior, I'm only a normal 9th-generation disciple in Hidden Dragon Sect. I. Su Ming was still as calm as ever. Lifeless waves of death aura started seeping out of the hand he had lifted in the air, and he pointed towards Sun Shan. Immediately, a wisp of grey smoke drifted from his little finger towards Sun Shan. Still spouting nonsense, I see. You lured the 3 evil spirit sect members here because you wanted to kill them with the rune in the cave abode, and you also wanted to open it so that you could hide from being killed in this disaster. Even if a normal disciple managed to think about this, he wouldn't be able to do it, Su Ming stated flatly. When Sun Shan saw that the grey smoke was about to touch his body, anguish appeared on his face. After a moment of hesitation, he spoke up. I'm a 9th-generation disciple who has the potential to search for the dragon. I know the way to break most of the seals under 6th rank in Hidden Dragon Sect. The treasures here have been taken away, but some of them are hidden. I might not know where they are, but if I can return to the main Hidden Dragon Sect, then I could bring all of the treasures to you secretly. I swear, I can do it, I can definitely do it. The terror of death seeped into Sun Shan's voice, and as he looked at Su Ming, a pleading expression appeared on his face. The grey smoke from Su Ming's little finger stopped 3 inches before Sun Shan. There might be no killing intent or any sort of sinister chill coming from that grey smoke, but the wisps of lifeless air coming from it made Sun Shan's life force run rampant in his body. It was like if that grey smoke touched his body, the fire that was his life would be immediately extinguished. Do you know the hidden execution of Justice One? A flicker of light appeared in Su Ming's eyes before he suddenly asked. Sun Shan was momentarily stunned, and his heart let out a loud thump against his chest. The hidden execution of justice art was the top secret art in Hidden Dragon Sect. Few outsiders knew about it, much less the name of the art itself, but the person before him had just mentioned it. I can only perform a fusion up to the 4th Dao, and I can only bring up a bit of its power. After a moment of hesitation, Sun Shan explained in a low whisper. What is Bright Yang Stone? Su Ming asked again. Sun Shan's expression changed immediately and he fell silent. He no longer spoke. Su Ming did not rush him. He simply waited for his answer. After some time, Sun Shan cast Su Ming a miserable look and sighed in his heart. Bright Yang Stone is the source for us immortals who descended in this land in large quantities to be able to use our power. We gathered our life force together on that stone so that we could descend in Yin Death region. Each sect who descends in this place would need to prepare a Bright Yang Stone by gathering up souls. This stone is also the item we need if we want to leave this place. Bright Yang. Su Ming's expression was calm, but a thought rose in his heart. Once he analyzed Sun Shan's words with the cause of why Shandong would want to snatch that stone, he could tell that most of what he said was true, even though he was still hiding something. No wonder Evil Spirit Sect wants to get that Bright Yang Stone. It's practically the same existence as a life stone too. It is an item that has gathered all the souls of those who descended here from a sect. This is Yin Death region, and beyond this place we have Bright Yang Emptiness. When they came here from that place, this stone must have been able to prevent the power of Yin Death from permeating their bodies. With its protection, the souls of all those who descended can remain in the state of Bright Yang. If Evil Spirit Sect gets this Bright Yang Stone and destroys it, then it would mean that they've killed off a large amount of immortals who descended here. Su Ming's gaze landed on Sun Shan. He had chosen to bring this person into the cave abode earlier because he had his guesses as to why he had lured the trio from Evil Spirit Sect to this place. The interrogation just now had allowed Su Ming to get his answers, even if the man's words could not be fully trusted. If I was Gu Yuan Hai, who only had his nascent soul left and his sect destroyed, all while I had that bright yang stone the evil spirit sect is set on obtaining, I would definitely not bring it with me. I would instead hide it away. Only by doing so could I save myself. If Gu Yuan Hai was a person who was afraid of death, then this wouldn't happen. But during the fight, he had had the guts to make his physical body explode. He should be a very loyal member of Hidden Dragon sect. If I was him and could split this bright yang stone in half, then I would take a small half of it and leave this place so that I could make myself into a bait and obtain the chance to hide away the other, larger half of the bright yang stone. Then no one would be able to find it. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. He had already considered this when Gu Yuan Hai was fighting against Shandong earlier. That was why he had chosen to work with Gu Yuan Hai and help him stall for time, even though he knew that there was a chance that there would be no treasures in the cave abode. Because not only was this act of stalling for time beneficial to Gu Yuan Hai, it was also beneficial to Su Ming for analysis. There were 2/10 of a chance that Gu Yuan Hai was afraid of death, and my guess was completely wrong, but even so, I wouldn't have suffered any loss. There are 4/10 of a chance that he would hide the bright yang stone away, and there are similar 4/10 of a chance that he would take a small piece with him, while the bigger piece would be hidden somewhere near this place. Su Ming narrowed his eyes, and a brilliant light shone within them. The more important this thing is, the more desperate Hidden Dragon sect would be to hide it. I wouldn't have bothered if Evil Spirit sect had truly managed to snatch it away, but if my guess is correct, then once Thousand River Valley regains a little form of peace, Hidden Dragon sect would definitely wonder whether they should send powerful warriors to sneak into this place and take the stone away. After all, this place is now extremely dangerous to them. Perhaps I can create this chance for Hidden Dragon sect. A pensive look appeared in Su Ming's eyes, but at the moment these thoughts appeared in his head, Sun Shan looked at him and suddenly gritted his teeth. A determined look appeared on his pale face, and he said, "Senior, if you're determined not to let me go, then how about this? I can give you a huge gift. I can offer up my life and search for the places we keep our treasures in Hidden Dragon sect." Chapter 634. Teach a Fish How to Swim. Su Ming lifted his head and cast Sun Shan a glance. There was a resolute look on this person's face, making him seem as if he had decided to risk everything for the sake of surviving. Yet even though this Sun Shan was smart and calculative, with the amount of experience Su Ming had gained through his multiple life and death encounters, he still was able to find some clues. He did not immediately speak, but chose to let his gaze fall on the ground in the cave abode. There's a spirit vein here, and it's the perfect place for me to swiftly recover my cultivation base, but when I absorb this spirit vein, I'll definitely cause a huge ruckus, and I can't immediately absorb it. It'll affect my plans to lure out Hidden Dragon sect. Su Ming fell into a contemplative silence. Most of his analysis was made on pure speculation, and as he thought about the feasibility as well as the gains and losses in his plan, a glint appeared in his eyes. I'll first lure out those people from Hidden Dragon sect. It'll be good if I succeed, but if I don't, then I'll stop thinking about anything else and focus on absorbing this spirit vein to recover my cultivation base and reach the Berserker Soul Realm. Su Ming made his decision. He waved his arm at Sun Shan, and the grey smoke before him immediately withdrew to return to his right little finger. "Continue," Su Ming said languidly. Once Sun Shan his previous words, his heart pounded nervously, but he still kept the determined look on his face and did not dare to show any cracks in his facade. He knew full well just how terrifying this person was, and everything about Su Ming in terms of comprehensive abilities and his cultivation base had surpassed Sun Shan. Even if Sun Shan tried to deceive him, it would be difficult due to Su Ming's intelligence. That was what he believed. I possess the potential to search for dragons and can detect the presence of treasures. The seniors in my sect might have hidden the treasures away, but if I offer up my life, there are 8/10 of a chance that I would be able to find them. I can also crack the seal there slightly. I cannot promise that I will be able to open the seal, but I can weaken it by a large margin so that you would be able to obtain it. Doing this is the same as betraying my sect. I will be using my life and this act as a chip in exchange for an oath from you. If I succeed, please let me leave. Not a single hint of deceit could be detected on Sun Shan's face. His despair and desperate expression, coupled with his words and tone of voice, all screamed of a desire to continue living. If it was anyone else, perhaps they would truly be affected by his words, but when it came to Su Ming, he only maintained his cool. After casting a few scrutinizing glances at Sun Shan, he nodded his head. Sun Shan became even more nervous after he said those words. He kept his eyes fixed on Su Ming, and when he saw the nod, his heart relaxed slightly, but there was not much change to his expression. The determined look on his face only grew stronger. I only have one chance. If I succeed, this person will definitely die. If I fail, no, I shouldn't fail. This person might be extraordinarily intelligent, but I'm confident that I didn't slip. He might be suspicious, but no matter who it is, they won't refuse my offer. The most they would do is to agree to it and see how things unfold while remaining skeptical. Senior, please swear an oath, or else even if I die, I will still never submit to you. Sun Shan looked at Su Ming and spoke with gritted teeth. Su Ming laughed coldly in his heart, but he remained as composed as ever. If you can do as you say, then once I succeed, I will naturally return you your freedom. Senior, please swear an. Sun Shan began speaking again, but his words were cut off by Su Ming before he could finish. I'll give you the span of 3 breaths. Either you look for those treasures, or you die. A slight hint of impatience appeared on Su Ming's face. With a wave of his arm, he released the restraint on Sun Shan's body, which returned him his ability to move, and his cultivation base was no longer sealed. The 3 breaths went by very quickly. Sweat beaded on Sun Shan's face, and when he saw Su Ming lifting his right hand, he clenched his teeth, and the determined look on his face became even more prominent. Senior, please do keep to your promise. As he spoke, Sun Shan sat down cross-legged on the ground. Once he formed a seal with his hands, he tapped his ears, and as his body trembled, 2 trails of blood flowed down from his eyes. Black blood also poured out from his ears at the same time. Su Ming stood by the side, and a freezing glare shone in his eyes. He wanted to see just what this person was thinking. After a moment, he saw Sun Shan trembling even more viciously, and with a wave of his right hand, 4 black needles immediately appeared on his palm. Without a hint of hesitation, he stabbed 1 needle into the center of his brows, another into the top of his skull, the 3rd into his heart, and the last needle went straight to his throat. At the instant these 4 black needles went into his skin, a strange light shone in Sun Shan's eyes. A deep wave of fatigue also appeared within them. He lifted his head, and his gaze seemed to be able to see through the cave and look at the world outside. These 4 needles can stimulate his soul, and the potential within his life force will also burst forth under this stimulation. By the looks of it, the price for the stimulation of this potential is the burning of his life force. With this method, his body will become empty. It does somewhat fit into what he said about offering up his life. Su Ming gave Sun Shan a once-over, and these thoughts passed through his head. The treasure trove is 78 leagues away from Thousand River Valley, and within 10,000 feet of the 3rd barren hill. Once Sun Shan said these words, with much difficulty on his part, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. When that blood appeared, the 4 black needles immediately started shivering, and as Sun Shan started breathing rapidly, he immediately brought out 2 more black needles. He pushed into his dantian region and the other 3 inches above his navel. Senior, please take me there. I will open the seal for you. Once the 2 needles entered Sun Shan's body, his face gained a slightly healthier shade, but there was a sickly red flush on his cheeks. Su Ming could see it clearly. Once the needles pierced Sun Shan's skin, his life force began burning a little quicker, and this was the reason why he could still remain conscious. Su Ming didn't say a word. With a wave of his arm, he swept up Sun Shan and took a step forward. At the same moment his foot landed on the ground, he cast his nascent divinity outward, causing his body to instantly disappear with Sun Shan in hand. Once he warped out of the cave, he warped once more without even stopping. After doing so several times, Su Ming arrived outside a mountain range filled with barren hills without attracting too much attention due to his extreme speed. This place was 78 leagues away from Thousand River Valley. There were 7 barren hills in this place. Once Su Ming appeared, he swept his gaze across the mountain range, and his eyes landed on the 3rd barren hill. That hill was empty, and there was not a single hint of green that could be spotted on it. It was very normal, so normal that it would not catch anyone's attention. "Please place me at the top of the mountain, Xianxia. I will do my best to break the seal for you. Once you successfully retrieve the treasure, please let me go free on behalf of me burning my life and betraying my sect," Sun Shan said, with much difficulty, his breathing labored. Su Ming cast Sun Shan a glance and nodded. If this person truly did not have any other ulterior motives, then he would return him his freedom as according to his promise. With one move, he brought Sun Shan to the third barren hill, and once he placed him on a giant rock at the top of the mountain, Su Ming took a few steps backwards and swept his gaze through the area. This place was empty. There was not a sign of anything being hidden here. Does he really mean what he said? Su Ming was uncertain. He had been observing Sun Shan up to this moment, and right from the moment he began casting his art to this point, he had not slipped up a single time. All of his actions seemed to be truly of him solely searching for the treasures, and the burning of his life force as well as the burst of his potential were not fake. It was especially so for his body, which was close to empty at this point. He was like water in an originally full bottle. Due to a fire, he was turning into steam and becoming less as time went by. Sun Shan formed a seal with his hands once again before he pressed his palms flat on the ground. The entire mountain let out a loud hum, and a large amount of stones broke off. A stream of light could be faintly seen at the center of the mountain. That stream of light was semi-transparent, and Su Ming could see that there was a door leading to a cave abode right under it. Sun Shan's face turned pale. As he trembled, his hands flew off from the ground, as if he was bounced off by some sort of energy from within. His body swayed, and he coughed up blood once again before he waved his arms. 8 black needles immediately appeared. Those needles sank into his body, and once he pushed them all deep within him, his body now contained 14 black needles. Su Ming could see a large amount of Sun Shan's life force burning in him, and that life force was spreading out of his body. "Senior, I can only keep it open for the span of a few breaths. I will tell you the time soon. You can choose not to go in and take out the items inside with just your divine sense." Sun Shan's voice was hoarse. His eyes were bloodshot, and sweat poured down his entire body. Su Ming could not find any sort of problems with his words. If there was really something dangerous in the cave abode, he could simply omit the offer of asking Su Ming to enter the cave abode with his divine sense. Su Ming frowned and looked towards Sun Shan again. A thought suddenly bloomed in his heart. Most of the young man's body had become empty at this point. The life force he was burning was spreading outwards, and it was gradually disappearing into the air. There was originally nothing strange about it, but his current condition was somewhat familiar to Su Ming. Possession. No, his opening up his body for someone to descend on him. Su Ming narrowed his eyes. Sun Shan's body was entirely empty, and while he was a perfect vessel to be possessed at that moment, his body was an even better vessel for a nascent divinity to descend on him. To cast the art for a nascent divinity to descend on a body, a person needed to practice a similar cultivation method as what Sun Shan was doing at that moment. When his body became empty like a bottle without any water, other people who practiced a similar cultivation method would be able to arrive swiftly no matter how far they were to fill up that bottle with water again. When Su Ming remembered seeing him stabbing those 14 needles into his body, he deliberately observed Sun Shan once more, and he found that there were 7 among the 14 that might have seemed to be stimulating his potential, but in truth, when compared to the 7 others, they were clearly used to confuse Su Ming's eyes. The remaining 7 needles were arranged to form a rune on Sun Shan's body with his veins under his skin serving as the connection between the needles. However, that rune was still incomplete. Once Su Ming cast Sun Shan a scrutinizing look, he could tell that the rune seemed to be missing 1 needle. At that moment, Sun Shan lifted his right hand, and a black needle appeared on his palm. Without any hesitation, he pushed it straight above his left ear, and green veins instantly popped up on his face. "Senior, you can enter now." At the same moment he shouted those words, the stream of light from the center of the mountain froze for a moment before rapidly fading away to reveal a gap. The door to the cave abode also opened up a crack with loud rumbling sounds, and a trail of extreme yang aura seeped out. If it was anyone else, even if they were dubious towards Sun Shan's words, they would definitely be attracted to the cave abode opening at that moment, and would naturally relax their guard towards the young man. What Sun Shan wanted was this chance that lasted only for an instant. At that moment, he started chanting in his heart. The water in the sky contains the beauty that blesses an emperor, and that beauty is right at the center one. Master, please appear in me. Chapter 635. Mighty. As Sun Shan shouted that chant in his heart, the presence of his burning life spreading out from his body immediately started changing based on some sort of law in the universe. This change seemed to be working in accordance to the clouds, the stars, the wind around them, the terrain of the ground itself, and everything else in the world. It also formed a tight connection to the rune that was formed after Sun Shan pushed the 8 needles into his body. It was as if Sun Shan's body had turned into an invisible black hole at that moment, one that was connected to a place somewhere tens of thousands of leagues away. It resulted in Sun Shan turning into a medium connecting 2 points through space, and his body becoming one of the 2 points. A nascent divinity would then be able to descend on him after traveling through the medium. Sun Shan was laughing coldly in his heart. He believed that this plan he prepared was foolproof. Unless Su Ming absolutely did not believe in him and immediately cut him off at the moment he started casting this art before killing him, Sun Shan was absolutely confident that he could make him walk straight into his death trap. Everything he had done previously was for this final moment. At the instant Su Ming's attention was attracted by the cave abode opening up, he would make this energy in him explode. He only needed an instant for this to work. Even if Su Ming noticed it later, it would still make no difference. However, all of these idealistic situations he'd imagined would usually not work as planned in reality. For example, one could take the fact that when Sun Shan started shouting the chant in his heart to have his master's nascent divinity descend on his body, he saw Su Ming, who he thought would be looking at the cave abode opening up, looking over at him coldly instead. There was a hint of scorn in that aloof gaze, and once Sun Shan saw it clearly, a shudder went through his body. Su Ming's gaze was like a sharp blade that pierced his body, and he felt as if all his secrets had been revealed under that gaze. He could hide nothing from Su Ming. Impossible. He couldn't have possibly noticed my thoughts. I didn't slip up even once. Sun Shan's heart let out a loud thump, and his body started trembling, but he no longer had time or freedom to be thinking too much. He swiftly lifted his hands and formed a seal before striking his own body. Sun Shan started trembling violently with a bang, and a powerful might spread out from his body, as if another divine sense had appeared within him out of nowhere. That divine sense swiftly grew larger, rapidly turning into a nascent divinity to occupy Sun Shan's body and take control over it. Right from the start till the end, Su Ming never tried stopping him. When Sun Shan saw this, his heart went wild with joy, but at the same time, he also grew uncertain. The feeling that he could not see through Su Ming's thoughts rose within him once again. "Are you done descending yet?" Su Ming asked flatly. At the instant he voiced that question, Sun Shan's heart started trembling violently. All of the things that he thought had happened to him by luck fell to pieces. He knew that this person had learned of what he intended to do a long time ago, but he still let him complete the entire process of calling his master to descend on him. This would only have happened if he was either an idiot, or he had complete confidence in himself. He was confident that even if Sun Shan asked his master to descend on him, he would still be able to completely dominate him. But Sun Shan was a little too slow in his realization. These thoughts had just appeared in his head when his consciousness disappeared with a bang and fell into deep sleep. He had finished casting his divine ability, and the divine sense that had appeared out of nowhere in his body had already expanded and gathered together to turn into a nascent divinity. His eyes fell shut and his head rolled downwards, then all his qi disappeared with his consciousness. But at the same time that happened, a terrifying might swiftly replaced his qi and exploded from his body. But the radius of the explosion was limited to only a circular area of 10,000 feet. Clearly, whoever it was did not want to spread that explosion too far away to avoid evil spirit sex detection. "Sir, aren't you being a little too careless to just watch me descend? How should I repay you?" A hoarse voice came from Sun Shan's lips. When he started speaking slowly, his shut eyes swiftly flew open, and a brilliant sparkle appeared in them, like a flash of lightning, before he lifted his head. When he did so, his body began rapidly aging right before Su Ming's eyes. Almost in the blink of an eye, the young Sun Shan was no longer there, but was replaced by an old person who exuded an ancient air. His skin was filled with wrinkles, and his hair had already turned gray. A powerful presence that did not belong to Sun Shan slowly spread out from his body. If you want to repay me, then tell me how many fusions of Tao you can do with your hidden execution of justice, Su Ming said flatly, his expression remaining calm. Cracking sounds came from Sun Shan's body at that moment, and Sun Shan's master slowly stood up. His gaze was like lightning as he looked at Su Ming, and he suddenly began laughing. So you were after Hidden Dragon Sect's hidden execution of justice. I can fuse 6 Taos within that art. At the same time the old man said those words, he took a step towards Su Ming. When his foot landed on the void, powerful waves spread out under it and started sweeping outwards in all directions, as if the air had turned into water, and his foot had turned into a stone that could create ripples on the surface once it fell in. Those waves seemed normal, but in truth, each one contained the power of the old man's cultivation base. As it spread out and closed in on Su Ming, he also lifted his right foot and took a step forward. At the instant his foot landed, waves also started spreading out from under his foot and crashed into the waves that the old man had created with his cultivation base. When the opposing waves connected, interconnecting loud bangs rang out continuously. The old man let out a muffled grunt and staggered a few steps backwards. When he lifted his head, his expression changed. Great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm. His pupils shrank. Early stage in the ascendant stage. Su Ming's body swayed slightly, but he did not back down as he looked at the old man and stated slowly. Are you Man Ya? Or are you perhaps Wu Shuang, Xue Shuo, Qian Qi, or Kai Lei Qian, appearing before me after you went into hiding and changed your appearance? The old man stared at Su Ming and blurted these 5 names in one go. Su Ming was familiar with Kai Lei Qian's name among the 5 he mentioned, but he had never heard of the other 4 before. However, if the old man would say these names when he presumed that Su Ming was a berserker who had attained great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm, then these people must surely have the same level of cultivation as what he presumed Su Ming to have. These 5 people must be the 5 berserkers who have attained great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm within Eastern Wastelands. Besides Kai Lei Qian, one of the names he mentioned should include all entities' clan's progenitor, who had fought against me across the sea. Su Ming did not answer his question. When his foot landed, a glint appeared in his eyes before he took another step. At the moment he moved forward, a vast amount of power erupted from his body and fused into his foot, causing the weather within 10,000 feet to change and a huge vortex to appear in the sky. At the same time, a huge foot materialized in mid-air. This one step belonged to a certain divine ability, the god of the Berserker's 7 steps. Sun Shan's master swiftly moved back. He was cursing in his heart at that moment. He might have come here with his nascent divinity instead of his real self, but if his nascent divinity was injured or destroyed, it would also be a disaster for him. He did not expect that his disciple would call him here to face a powerful enemy who had attained great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm, which was the equivalent of the Great Circle in Ascendance. If he knew about this earlier, he would not have bothered about a single disciple's call or about his survival, even if that disciple had the rare potential to search for dragons. Even if the presence of bright young stone here had allowed him to descend in this place while ignoring the consequences, but all of this was not worth it in his eyes if he had to fight against a berserker who had attained great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm. After all, it did not matter whether it was his disciple or that bright young stone, both of these things were just external objects. Besides, that bright young stone did not have his soul, so he did not have to worry about his own survival either. As he retreated, his expression turned dark and he lifted his hands while biting down on the tip of his tongue to cough up a mouthful of fresh blood. Once he formed a seal and pointed forward with both hands, the blood swiftly spread out and turned into a humanoid that charged forward. Immediately after, that blood humanoid's body swayed as it moved forward and turned into 2 before it swaying once more and splitting into 4. When nearly 100 humanoids were in the air, they moved in unison towards the foot in the sky, and towards Su Ming. Su Ming did not stop moving even for a single instant. He took the 7 steps in swift succession. When he completed them, the world rumbled, and a powerful force of impact swept horizontally in all directions, starting from this place itself. Under the loud rumbles, the face of Sun Shan's master turned stark pale. He swiftly retreated, and blood trickled out of the corners of his mouth. Shock also appeared on his face. He's not in the great completion stage of the Berserker soul realm, but is halfway into the path to life cultivation. He's already equivalent to those in illusory yin and corporeal yang. The old man did not hesitate in his retreat. He already did not have the heart to continue fighting. The only thought he had in his mind at that moment was to widen the distance between them and strive for a chance to leave this body. However, before he managed to retreat up to even some hundreds of feet, Su Ming charged forward like an arrow in the mid of that force of impact and subsequent shattering of space. When he lifted his right hand, wisps of black smoke spread out and turned into the Undertaker of Evil's spear on his palm. Once he gripped it, he swiftly threw it forward. A piercing hum came from the Undertaker of Evil's spear as it turned into a long black arc that charged towards the old man, whose pupils shrank once again. He was already at a disadvantage because he could not bring with him any enchanted treasures when he descended to this place, and there was simply too big of a disparity between their combat abilities. When the long spear closed in on him, he swiftly lifted his hands and formed a strange seal that seemed like a vase before pushing it forward. A vase that had streams of light flowing from it immediately manifested and crashed into the long spear. With a loud bang, the vase shattered, and the long spear shot through the broken pieces, slicing through the old man's right arm. With a loud bang, the old man's right arm shattered instantly and turned into a bloody mess of torn flesh. His face turned even paler, but he still gritted his teeth and continued retreating hastily. With each step he took backwards, his presence in the body would reduce slightly. Soul's return in 6 steps. The old man no longer had any will to fight. The only thought he had in his mind at that moment was to have his nascent divinity return to Hidden Dragon Sect. Once he took 3 steps back, his presence reduced by a large margin, but just as he was about to take his 4th step back, Su Ming closed in on him,